The rain came down in silver sheets that night, soaking the cracked pavement and turning the streetlights into blurred halos. The city of Bridgeport hummed quietly, cars rushing home, neon signs flickering above closed diners, and the faint echo of thunder rolling over the skyline. In the back seat of a sleek black Bentley sat Ethan Graves, a man whose name appeared in Forbes, whose companies built skyscrapers that kissed the clouds. To the world, he was a success story, a millionaire who had turned dust into gold. But inside, Ethan felt like a hollow monument, tall, admired, and completely empty. He wasn't supposed to be here tonight. His schedule was packed. His assistant had begged him to rest, but something inside him, a small, nagging ache, had pulled him back to the forgotten corners of the city. He stared out the window, eyes fixed on a narrow street that time seemed to have erased. "Stop here," he told his driver. The car slowed, tires splashing through puddles before halting in front of an old iron gate. Beyond it stood a house, crooked, tired, and sagging under the weight of years. The paint had peeled away in strips. The porch leaned to one side, and the roof looked ready to give up its fight against the rain. Ethan stepped out, pulling his wool coat tight against the cold. The driver hesitated. "Sir, this neighborhood, I know where I am," Ethan said quietly. This house had once belonged to his father, before the debt collectors, before the foreclosure, before his family fell apart. He had been 17 when they lost it. He still remembered the night they left, his mother crying in the kitchen while his father stood silent by the door, holding a box that used to contain his tools and dreams. Now, decades later, Ethan owned that house again, bought it in a batch of city foreclosures, not realizing until months later what he had signed. He'd told himself he'd tear it down someday. But tonight, he just wanted to see it one last time. He walked toward the steps when a voice cut through the storm. "Don't go in that house." Ethan froze, turning sharply. A boy, thin, soaked, and trembling, stood by the alley. He couldn't have been older than 12. His hair clung to his forehead, his face smudged with dirt, and his oversized hoodie looked like it had been fished out of a dumpster. "What did you say?" Ethan asked. The boy took a hesitant step forward. "Don't go in there. It's not safe." Ethan frowned, scanning the structure. "Because it might collapse?" The boy shook his head. "Because people live there. They don't like strangers," Ethan blinked. "People?" "Yeah," the boy said softly. "Homeless people. They come here at night. It's kind of their place." Ethan looked again at the dark windows. A faint flicker of orange light, maybe a candle or a small fire, glowed inside. Something in his chest tightened. He hadn't thought about who might be inside the buildings he owned, only what they were worth. "What's your name, kid?" "Ty," the boy said. "Do you live around here, Ty?" Ty hesitated. "Sort of." He glanced toward the alley. "Sometimes I sleep in the church basement, but it's full tonight." "So yeah." Ethan's eyes softened. "You've been out here all night?" Ty nodded. Ethan sighed. "Go somewhere dry." "It's freezing." Ty shrugged. "I'm used to it." Ethan started to turn toward the house again, but the boy's voice rose in panic. "Please don't go in there." Ethan looked back. "Why?" Ty's eyes darted toward the door. "They get scared easy. They think everyone's out to take it from them." He hesitated before adding, "One of them's sick. Real bad." The door opens. Ethan hesitated. Something about the boy's voice, desperate, protective, struck him. He walked up to the porch anyway, the boards groaning beneath his shoes. The door creaked open with a tired sigh. "Wait," Ty cried, following him up the steps. Inside, the air smelled of damp wood and smoke. The flickering light came from a tin can burning scraps of paper. 3 figures huddled near it. An old man, a woman wrapped in a blanket, and a teenage girl with hollow cheeks. When Ethan stepped in, they all flinched. The old man rose, defensive. "We ain't doing nothing wrong," he rasped. "We just need a place to stay." Ethan raised his hands. "I'm not here to throw you out." The woman's eyes narrowed. "You're the owner?" Ethan hesitated. "Yes, but I didn't know anyone was living here." Ty slipped in behind him. "He's okay," the boy said quickly. He didn't mean to scare anyone. The old man lowered his guard slightly. The teenager coughed, a deep rattling sound that echoed through the hollow house. "She's sick," Ty said quietly. "Been like that all week." Ethan's instincts and the corporate ones that built his empire screamed to leave. To call someone to keep his distance. But another part of him, the one that remembered being a boy in this same neighborhood, couldn't move. "Do you have medicine?" he asked. The woman shook her head. "No insurance. We tried the clinic, but..." She looked down. "They said they couldn't help without ID." Ethan knelt beside the coughing girl. She couldn't have been more than 16. Her forehead burned with fever. He pulled out his phone. "There's a hospital 15 minutes away. I'll take her." The old man stiffened. "No, we can't afford..." "You don't need to afford it," Ethan interrupted firmly. "I'll cover it." The woman's lip trembled. "Why would you do that?" Ethan looked around the room. The broken furniture, the cold floor, the memories of his father's laughter echoing faintly in the walls. "Because this used to be my home," he said quietly, "and no one should suffer in my father's house." The drive minutes later, Ty sat in the back of the Bentley beside the sick girl, wrapped in a blanket. Ethan sat up front, giving the driver directions. The boy looked around, eyes wide. "This car's nicer than a hotel room." Ethan managed a small smile. "It's just a car." "Not to me," Ty said. "I've never been in something that didn't smell like rain." They reached the hospital, where Ethan's name opened doors faster than paperwork ever could. The girl was rushed to a room, and within an hour, a doctor approached them. "Pneumonia," she said. "Severe, but she'll recover with treatment." Ty let out a breath he didn't know he was holding. Ethan just nodded, silent. The truth comes out later. As they waited in the hallway, Ty sat beside Ethan on a plastic bench. "You really didn't have to do that," the boy said. "They're just people nobody cares about." Ethan looked at him. "You care," Ty shrugged. "Someone has to." There was something so simple, so pure in those 3 words that Ethan felt embarrassed by his own life. The board meetings. The luxury, the numbers that had replaced faces. He studied the boy. "Where are your parents?" Ty looked down. "Don't know. Mom left when I was little. Dad's in prison, I think." He stopped asking. Ethan's chest tightened. "And you've been surviving alone?" Ty smiled faintly. "Not really alone. Those people in the house? They're kind of my family now." Ethan swallowed hard. "You look after them?" "Yeah," Ty said softly. "Someone looked after me once. A lady who ran a soup kitchen. Said people who've been hurt usually make the best helpers. Guess she was right." The choice when dawn came, the rain had stopped. The girl was stable, the others waiting for news. Ethan drove Ty back toward the old neighborhood. The air smelled of wet earth and renewal. At the gate, Ty turned. "Thanks, Mr. Graves, for everything." Ethan looked at the house again, then at the boy. "Ty, what if I fixed this place up?" The boy blinked. "You mean, make it livable?" "More than that," Ethan said slowly. "A shelter. Warm beds, food, medicine, for anyone who needs it." Ty's mouth fell open. "You'd do that?" Ethan smiled faintly. "You taught me something tonight. I've been building skyscrapers for years, but maybe it's time to build something that actually matters." A year later, the Graves Community Home opened 12 months later, a renovated building on the same lot where the old house once stood. The faded paint was replaced with bright murals painted by local kids. The rooms were filled with laughter, warmth, and the smell of fresh bread from the kitchen. Ethan visited often, though not as a billionaire or a benefactor, just as a man trying to make amends. Ty now worked there part-time, helping new arrivals find beds and meals. The sick girl, Mia, had recovered and was studying to be a nurse. The woman and old man had moved into small apartments nearby, rebuilding their lives. On opening day, Ty found Ethan standing on the porch, staring at the ocean beyond the cliffs. "Feels different now," the boy said. Ethan smiled. "It does," Ty hesitated. "Why'd you really do it?" Ethan turned to him. "Because once a boy shouted at me in the rain, told me not to go into a house, and if I hadn't listened, I might have missed the best part of my life." Ty grinned. "Guess shouting works." Ethan laughed softly. "Sometimes the world just needs someone brave enough to shout." They stood there in silence, the sound of waves in the distance and the laughter of children spilling through the windows. The lesson. That night, as the lights of the shelter glowed against the dark sky, Ethan realized something simple yet profound. He had spent years chasing wealth, mistaking comfort for happiness. But true wealth, the kind that fills the soul, not the bank, came from seeing others rise, from giving warmth to someone who had only ever known cold. And for the first time in decades, Ethan Graves, the man who owned half the city, felt at home again. 5 years passed. The lane, once forgotten neighborhood that Ethan had revisited that stormy night was now unrecognizable. The cracked streets were repaired, the old factories converted into workshops, and the smell of burnt metal replaced by the scent of bread from a small cafe called Ty's Corner. It wasn't fancy, just a cozy spot with old wooden tables, mismatched mugs, and a photo on the wall showing a little boy in a hoodie standing next to a tall man in a black coat. The caption read, "The day everything changed." Ty, now 17, stood behind the counter, wiping his hands on a towel as he looked outside. A light drizzle danced over the windows, reminding him of that night. He still volunteered at the shelter, which had expanded into 2 more houses on the same street. Every week he'd make sandwiches for the kids who came in hungry and say, "Hey, I was you once." It gets better, and he meant it because it had gotten better, not just for him, but for hundreds. That afternoon, the cafe door opened and Ethan stepped in. His hair had more gray now, but his eyes were softer, the kind of softness that comes when life finally finds balance. "Mr. Graves," Ty greeted with a grin. Ethan smiled. "How many times have I told you to call me Ethan?" Ty chuckled. "Sorry, habit." Ethan walked to the photo wall, his gaze tracing the images of people they had helped. Men and women who once slept on park benches, now holding jobs, kids, and hope. "You did good, Ty," he said quietly. Ty leaned against the counter. "We did good together." Ethan turned to him. "Do you ever think about college?" Ty hesitated. "Sometimes. But I like it here. Feels like this is where I'm supposed to be." Ethan nodded slowly. "Then I'll make you a deal." Ty raised an eyebrow. "A deal?" Ethan smiled. "You keep running this cafe, keep helping people, and I'll handle your education. Business, social work, whatever you want. You can learn and keep doing what you love." Ty blinked, stunned. "You'd do that for me?" Ethan's eyes softened. "You already did something for me, Ty. You saved my soul the night you shouted in the rain." Full circle months later. Ty stood at the front of a crowded room, wearing a clean white shirt and a nervous smile. It was the opening ceremony for the newest Graves community home, the 4th one. This time, Ty was officially on the board. As he looked out at the faces, people laughing, crying, clapping, he spotted Ethan near the back, hands in his pockets, watching with quiet pride. Ty took a deep breath. 5 years ago, he began. "I was a kid sleeping behind that same building. I thought the world had forgotten me. But one man didn't. He didn't see a homeless boy. He saw a person. And because of that, I learned something I'll never forget." He paused, voice trembling. Sometimes all it takes to change a life is to stop long enough to listen, even if it's just to a scared kid shouting in the rain. The crowd erupted in applause. Ethan wiped his eyes discreetly. When the ceremony ended, Ty walked over to him. "You okay?" Ethan smiled through tears. "Proud, that's all." Ty grinned. "Then it's your turn to give the speech next time." Ethan laughed softly. "Deal." They stood side by side as the sun dipped low, painting the sky in gold and crimson. The final scene later that night, Ethan walked alone to the edge of the property. The lights from the shelter glowed behind him, a beacon against the darkness. He looked up at the stars, feeling the cool night air on his face. It had started with guilt, with loss. But it ended with grace. Somewhere in the distance, a boy laughed. The same kind of laugh Ethan once heard echoing through his childhood home. And for the first time in his life, Ethan realized something simple. He hadn't just rebuilt a house, he'd rebuilt a heart, his own. 10 years passed, the shelter had grown. From one small house into a network of community homes spread across the state. Each one, called the Haven Project, and every single one bore a small, bronze plaque near the door that read, "Dedicated to the boy who shouted in the rain, and to the man who finally listened." Ethan Graves was no longer the billionaire who hid behind his fortune. He had become a quiet force for good, a man who gave without needing credit, who showed up without cameras, who believed that wealth meant nothing if it didn't lift someone else. But time, as always, kept moving. Ty was now 22. He had finished college with honors in social work, and instead of taking a corporate job, he returned home. Not to the mansion Ethan once lived in, but to the neighborhood that had raised him, broken him, and finally saved him. He managed the Haven Central Shelter, mentoring kids who reminded him of himself, hungry, scared, unseen. And every evening, after the last child was asleep, Ty would step outside, look up at the stars and whisper softly, "Thank you for hearing me that night." A winter farewell, one gray December morning. The world lost Ethan Graves. It was peaceful. In his sleep, in his home by the sea. The newspapers called him the philanthropist who changed homeless care in America. But Ty didn't care about the headlines. He only cared about the man who had once stopped in the rain to listen to a boy who had nothing. At the funeral, the church overflowed, not with wealthy elites, but with people whose lives he had changed. Single mothers, veterans, orphans, students. Ty stood by the podium, his voice steady but full of emotion. "I used to think heroes were people with capes or cars or money," he said. "But real heroes are the ones who stop when everyone else keeps driving." Ethan Graves was one of those people. He taught me that when you save one person, you start a chain reaction, a ripple that never stops. He paused, eyes glistening. "And because of him, I'm here. Because of him. Hundreds of kids have beds tonight. Because of him. I believe in tomorrow." Silence fell, sacred, heavy, beautiful, and then, from the back row, an elderly woman stood. Her clothes were worn, her hair streaked with gray, but her eyes shone bright. She said softly, "Mr. Graves helped my grandson get off the streets. He saved his life. He saved our family." Dozens nodded. The ripple was still growing. A letter from Ethan after the service. Ty was handed a small sealed envelope with his name on it. Ethan's handwriting, neat, deliberate, covered the front. Inside was a single page. "Ty, if you're reading this, it means I've finally gone to meet the woman who taught me kindness. My mother. Don't be sad. You and I both know we got more time than most people ever get to make things right. The world can be cold, but you have something stronger than warmth. You have purpose. Promise me you'll keep shouting for the people no one hears. And remember, that night in the rain I thought I was saving you. But truth is, you were saving me. With love, Ethan." Ty pressed the letter to his chest and closed his eyes. The rain began to fall outside, soft and rhythmic, as if the world itself was remembering. Legacy years later. The Haven Project had expanded across the country. Ty became its director, often visiting schools, talking about homelessness, compassion, and second chances. He'd tell his story, the night he shouted, "Don't go in that house," and how one act of listening changed everything. In one interview, a reporter asked, "What made Ethan Graves so different?" Ty smiled and said, "He didn't just open his wallet. He opened his heart." The last seen a young boy, maybe 12, sat shivering on a park bench one night. Rain poured down in sheets. Cars sped past, ignoring him, except one. A man in his 30s stopped, rolled down his window, and said, "Hey kid, you okay? Need a ride somewhere warm?" The boy hesitated. I didn't think anyone would stop." The man smiled gently. "Someone once stopped for me." He opened the door, the boy climbed in. And somewhere, miles away, the ocean crashed softly against the cliffs, whispering a truth that would never fade. Kindness doesn't end with the giver. It begins with the next act.